We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome to Unmistakably Star Wars, your source for a high-quality, informative, and entertaining look into the Star Wars galaxy.
Well, we made it. We survived.
We thrived, Jeremy. We didn't just survive. We thrived. There's a difference, and I'm going out on a limb to say that we thrived at Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017.
Wow. We thrived.
Yeah, we thrived.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. It was one of those kind of adventurous trips, not that I was taking risks or anything, but I literally almost didn't make it.
Yeah, people around you were taking unknown risks. They just didn't realize it.
So I left, my flight was on Wednesday, and Tuesday night I was brutally sick.
Yes.
And I could hardly get out of bed. I was running a temperature. There was a moment, which is every Star Wars fan's nightmare that's going to Celebration, where I thought, I don't think I'm going to make this trip. And,
see, I thought you were going to say every fan's nightmare that they were going to actually have to sit next to Anthony Daniels on the plane ride.
Oh, wow.
Coming out of the gate strong today.
You are. You're a little sassy.
Yeah.
But I just kept, when I was having those horrible thoughts that were very unhealthy, I just thought to myself, one more hour. Let's just hold off one more hour before I make that call. And then finally my temp broke, and my wife just dumped me out at the departures at the airport in San Francisco, and made it and had a great celebration. So, I'm excited to talk about the things I saw instead of the things I watched on the screen.
Right. And we're still waiting for the final count of how many people you infected on that aircraft. But
I was a good boy, man. I washed my hands. I didn't sneeze in someone's face.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. It was, I was polite. I was a polite sick person.
You were a polite patient zero. That's great.
Yes, that's right. So if you have the con crud, it wasn't me.
Right.
I promise. Well, welcome to Unmistakably Star Wars. I'm Jeremy, and as always, I am joined by Devin.
Greetings, Tauntauns.
So just a few announcements before we dive into this awesome Star Wars Celebration recap episode. The Force Discourse, Thrawn is out on shelves. People are devouring it. I have just started. I was a little busy at Celebration. I was taking everything in, Devin.
Yes.
So I didn't read anything. Instead, I looked around and watched people and looked at cosplay and enjoyed all that stuff. So I've just started reading it. Love it so far. But Carl and I will be doing the Force Discourse on Thrawn in the upcoming weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And Devin, Star Wars on Tap, got anything brewing?
Star Wars on Tap is back in full force this week. And we are hanging out with Charlie Cody. And Charlie's not also just a Star Wars fan, but he is a Lucasfilm approved Topps artist. So you have no doubt seen his work on Topps cards if you have collected any of those cards. And it was a great time to sit down, not only hear about his fandom, but to actually get insight into what does it mean to be a Lucasfilm approved Topps artist.
That's cool. Yeah, and he was on our last episode, I think.
He was, yeah.
So I'm excited to listen to that Star Wars on Tap. One thing we love to do, and one thing we got to do, was meet amazing people at Celebration. And, we have this segment every week called I Will Follow.
Yes.
So if you don't know what I Will Follow is, it's very simple. Devin and I and the crew at Unmistakably Star Wars, we meet people online and social media that we're like, you know what? They're pretty cool. I like them.
Indeed.
I want other people to know about them.
Yes.
And we'd love to share them with you. Hopefully that you will follow them and we'll create this wonderful, healthy community that expresses love and not hate to one another. It's just an uplifting experience. That's our goal, right?
that's so hippie. I don't even know what to do with that. I feel like I should like throw on some Birks and maybe eat some granola. I don't know.
We are in the Bay Area.
We are in the Bay Area. So yes, let's join hands, surround the redwood trees of Mother Earth, and follow each other on Twitter.
That's what we need to do, man.
All right. So who you got this week?
So I have this person contacted us on Facebook. She's on Twitter as well. Just a delightful person. She's wanting to do some Star Wars podcasting. Was just asking some questions that were good questions. And so the more interaction I had with this wonderful person, I'm like, you know what? People need to know about her, and people need to follow her. She's cool. Her name is Eva Herinkova, and you can follow her at EvaHerinkova. So Eva, we love you. Thanks for being a fan of the show and listening. And please follow her on Twitter. So Devin, who you got? Who you want to share with the world?
Well, I am sticking with my tops artists, and our good friend of the show, Charlie Cody, actually turned us on to another guy who's not only a tops artist, but he actually works for the Mouse House. He is a Disney sketch artist.
Very cool.
And just got to actually sit down with him last night and have a great conversation. But yeah, I would love for you guys to follow Alex Iniguez, and you can find him on the Twitter and the Instagram at Alex Iniguez art. Cool. Alex Iniguez art.
Awesome, man. You're kind of hanging around with these artists now.
I'm trying to. The next step is to probably get a beret and start sipping my tea with my pinky extended. I'm not sure. Or maybe espresso. Is that it? I'm not sure.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. But yeah.
Whatever artists do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see every single artist doing that. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Hey, we got a wonderful show. We are so excited to talk about Star Wars Celebration, our experiences, but also just what was revealed. We're going to, walk through mainly the big panels. We're going to talk about, the 40th, The Last Jedi, briefly talk a little bit about Rebels, some publishing stuff, and just kind of walk through and wade through all of the information that came out about these unbelievable projects, but also just celebrating Star Wars. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into Celebration.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's so interesting.
Wait, there's something very weak coming through.
So, one of the cool things about Celebration is that it's not cool to be in line, but when you are in line, you meet cool people.
Well, not only do you meet cool people, but you kind of have an idea once in a while how the planets sometimes align.
I know where you're going.
Yeah.
So tell this story, because this is like incredibly
this is
freaky.
This couldn't,
in a good way.
It couldn't have been planned this way. So Star Wars Celebration Orlando broke records. 70,000 people in attendance, right?
70.
So that we're filling up American football stadiums at this point.
Yes, we are.
And the queues for the line, so we got there Thursday morning. Around 1,500 people spent Wednesday night into Thursday morning inside the convention center. You could be allowed to line up outside at 5 o'clock the next morning. Doors were going to open at 6. So we got there at around 4:45 a.m., and Jeremy, you know this as well as Carl and Tyler, who was there with us, that this is not an exaggeration. At 4:45 in the morning, our place in line was literally a half of a mile down the road, and
Yes,
people
it
were
was.
still getting in line behind us.
Yeah.
So we eventually make our way into the convention center. And of course, the 40th celebration panel, everyone's already got wristbands for that. We're out of luck. So we decide, let's go for the floor where all
get
the
on the show
vendors
floor.
are.
Yep.
And be able to at least get in line for that. So we sit down, and the queues for the lines are, I don't know, Jeremy, what do you think, around 7 feet wide or so?
Yeah, something like that.
So there's not everyone standing. People are lounging. Some people are just so beat tired that they're literally like laying down,
sleeping,
taking a nap.
Yeah.
And so we sit down, kind of like looking across the aisle, and here's this woman with her young son. I'm guessing he's 13, 14, somewhere in there, and she starts like looking at our shirts, which we're rocking our unmistakably Star Wars t-shirts, And she's looking at the shirts and she's looking at us, and you and I kind of glance at each other out of like our peripheral vision. And then she says, are you them? Are you them? To which I, of course, respond, yes, sorry to disappoint you.
What a great way to introduce ourselves.
Well, I mean, that's like,
sorry to disappoint you. But,
and so it turns out that woman is the wife of Mr. Evil Summer himself, Chris White.
I know. It's crazy.
It is. And so we end up sitting down next to Chris and his family and just have this fantastic conversation as we're waiting to get on to the show floor. But what are the odds? 70,000 people there, and we sit right down next to our Evil Summer.
I know. It's crazy. And we had just had an episode where we were talking about what a dumbass I was,
right.
How I confused people that listened to the show. And one of those people I confused was Chris. And lo and behold, we are sitting next to them in line. And not only that, it was weird. There's 70,000 people.
Yeah.
And we are bumping into Chris and his family over and over again. And it was just...
I think they were kind of stalking us personally.
You would think that. But, it was just at one point I told Chris, I'm like, it was the will of the force.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where you just can't quite explain it. So it was cool to bump into Chris, his family, but also I met another Chris in line, James, Lane, Johnny, Amanda, Kyle. You were all just wonderful to meet and talk to for hours because we were stuck in these lines. So it was really, really cool to meet people. And that was one of the special things about Star Wars Celebration. If you're listening to this and you've never been to one, we highly recommend. You got 2 years, save your money. It's an experience worth having. And it's a lot of fun, and you meet a lot of amazing people, and I would dare say friends that you'll have for a long time because of Star Wars, and that's really cool. So we're in line. We experience Star Wars Celebration, but really what the media and what the general public was focused on was really two things. I mean, you might be able to say three things, but the two things that everyone was focused on was the 40th panel, and then the Last Jedi panel.
Right.
Let's just talk about the 40th for a minute because it was pretty. It was the longest, I think, of the panels, and it was probably, in some ways, the most dramatic. You can make an argument that it isn't, but do you think it was a great way to start off Celebration? Do you think this was the way to do it with this 40th and what happened within it?
I think that it's, yes, intention-wise, fantastic idea. I felt that there were some great moments. I think that there were some moments that probably detracted from it a little bit.
Yeah.
I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. But I think that there were some moments that were, it caused me to go, so why did they do that?
Yeah.
And I think the most notable, well, let me talk first about like the positives. I mean, obviously we've got George Lucas in the house, which is just
awesome that he's there. Yeah.
It was great to see him kind of re-embrace, I guess, fandom.
Yeah.
And really kind of come down to the every man or every woman's level for a while.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, you can't outdo a live performance by the London Philharmonic Orchestra and John Williams.
Just having John Williams there was amazing. Yeah. So it was amazing.
I think there were some missteps, though, and I think part of it had to do around Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
There was such a buildup and anticipation, I think, from fandom in general. I mean, his autographs sold out lickety-split, and he wasn't even brought out by himself. He was brought out in tandem with Ian McDiarmid.
Yeah.
And then I think he was only asked 3 questions, and one of the questions was literally, what's it like to work with Ian McDiarmid?
Yeah. It was... he got a standing ovation, but because he came out with, the Emperor himself,
right?
It was... I wanted Hayden to get his due. I wanted the spotlight to be put on him, and I get it. You don't want it to be just about him, and there's all these stars that take the stage. But I was in general, I was really hopeful that he would get a little more focus would have been put on him. For me, that was really the only misstep. I know Eve was talking about how there was a weird exchange between Warwick Davis and Anthony Daniels.
Yeah. Well, go figure.
You would say that. But like, other than that, I was really pleased. I was really pleased that Sam Jackson gave a video, just like him hanging out in his hotel. I don't know,
right.
just with his iPhone or whatever he was using. And then, of course, Liam Neeson had a really funny little, like, making a Jar Jar movie.
Yes.
But in general, I was really, really thrilled to see all the people. But there was someone missing. And Ewan McGregor wasn't there.
Yeah.
And you know what was weird is as much video we see of him and as much bumping into Ewan McGregor in media.
Right.
In fact, he just had an interview on something.
EW, I believe.
Yeah. And it's like, why didn't he record a message?
Yeah.
Why didn't he? So, of course, my fantasy is to have an Obi-Wan film.
Right.
And of course, I'm putting all this together because he's in some sort of project and they just don't want to reveal it yet.
Right. Yes, the big reveal.
But was it just pulling back, because I'm even more now than ever, I'm a Obi-Wan fan, and if I pull back from that obsessive fandom, was it odd that he wasn't there to you?
I think so. I think that, coupled with the fact of it was meant to celebrate 40 years of Star Wars, and perhaps it was my misimpression of it, but I was kind of surprised that they didn't bring out the new cast as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of here's where we've been, here's where we're going.
Yeah.
And so I was a little surprised at that, but I would agree that I think it's great that Sam Jackson and that Liam Neeson were there, but it was a little surprising that Mr. McGregor was not among those in attendance, whether through video or live.
Yeah, his uncle was there, but he was. I'm telling you, man, I really think, in all seriousness for a minute, he probably has some sort of involvement in some project.
Yeah.
And they're just not ready to pull the trigger on announcing that yet. And so I don't know if it's Force Ghost Episode 8, if it's an Obi-Wan, standalone film. Kathleen Kennedy did say, I believe it was on MTV.com, in an interview, in an exchange with one of the interviewer, she said that it looks like there's a good chance that this summer they'll announce what's next.
Right.
And so obviously, if you don't know, D23 will be happening this summer. It's Disney's big convention. And not only that, you have Comic-Con. Although Disney's presence at Comic-Con has been, when it comes to Marvel, there's been some diminishment. I'm not sure of all the convention politics going on. I know there's people that have been frustrated with San Diego.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I don't know all those details and ins and outs and all that. But I wouldn't be surprised if at D23 there's something said and announced. Please let it be Obi-Wan. Please, God. Please hear me. I thought the Billy Lord coming out, I don't know how. My parents are still alive, thank goodness. And I don't know what that would be like to lose a parent. And then months later, 4+ months later, you're standing in front of thousands of people in attendance, but also
globally
online,
right?
and then talk about your mother who you loved and her departure. And so one, very impressed with Billy Lord, and very impressed with the video they put together.
Yes, it was a nice montage.
It was well done, and I've watched it multiple times. In fact, my students were at the beginning of class yesterday. They were asking me about my trip, and one of my classes is, in general, interested in what I do beyond teaching, and so they're always asking me about what I'm doing. And
it's called delaying the lesson plan for the day. But go ahead.
I don't like to think that. I like to think they really care about me, Devin. But you're right; they don't give two about me. But I showed them the Carrie Fisher video, and they loved it. And it was an entertaining piece, but also one that's very. One that's very, it digs into you emotionally. Yeah. And, I couldn't imagine a better 40th. I couldn't imagine, other than maybe the misstep with Hayden, where's Ewan McGregor?
Yeah.
It would have been a lot of fun to have McGregor come out and then Hayden follow him soon after. That place would have gone crazy.
Right.
And there was a moment in The Last Jedi panel, and we'll get to that in a minute, where people were yelling out their who is Rey theories, and I think at one point Josh Gad said, are you a Kenobi? And the place went crazy, and Daisy Ridley even responded, "That's a real popular one." And I know Lucasfilm knows,
right?
Like, this character is popular, and he is something that I don't think they would just, let's not make this. We got other things coming. No. You make Obi-Wan.
Well,
I'm telling
it's
them.
a cash cow.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would hope. I hope.
Yeah.
So, anyways, 40th panel, amazing stuff. Great way to kick off a celebration. I was really impressed. I mean, the fact that it concluded with John Williams. I mean, you had Harrison Ford. We didn't even talk about that. I mean, his appearance, awesome. It was his first celebration that he had ever attended.
Wow.
So, he was at a Comic-Con in San Diego, I think. And then, this is the first Star Wars celebration he was at. And just there were moments that some of these actors had where it was Dennis Lawson and Wedge, or even Harrison Ford, where there was just this acknowledgement of the fans and saying, thank you. We appreciate you. And
I think that was one of the cool things, too, because that period in the late 80s and through the 90s, it seems like Harrison Ford really pushed back against even his role in Star Wars. But it seems, and we touched on this too with his performance in Force Awakens and the press that happened before and after. But it seems like he's really come full circle in embracing it as much as he as an A+ list movie star is ever going to.
Yeah, of everyone, he's the deal, man.
Right.
He's iconic. Not as just Han Solo, but as so many other people, the characters that he's embodied. And, here's this iconic guy. We have him in this panel. We have the 40th big celebration. And then there's all these other panels on Thursday. And we went to Pablo Hidalgo and Dave Filoni did one on the origins of characters. And, it was delightful. It was fun. It was interesting. It was entertaining. It gave a lot of information. Just really quick, some of the things we noticed in that panel was that there was a comment made probably about 6 months ago about Rex being in Return of the Jedi on one of the
part of the strike team on the Forced Moon.
Yeah, so one of those guys is an older dude with a beard.
Yeah.
And Filoni kind of joked around. Well, there was some animation shown in that panel on Thursday of Rex in that garb, and people went crazy.
Yes, they did.
And so probably that's going to happen. He didn't say, it just showed up, and he goes, "Oh, where'd that come from?" Total Dave Filoni. So that was really interesting. So much wonderful content was in that panel. And then they showed an unfinished, animation sequence between Boba Fett and Cad Bane.
Yes.
And if you guys know, Boba Fett has this dent in his helmet. Well, we found out how that happened. And
epic moment.
It was really done. And even though it wasn't finished, it was voiced. There was some sound.
Right.
Man, I wish that was in the Clone Wars. It was so good. And it was just a reminder of how much storytelling they had left to do in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
It's really probably in the last 10 years or so, and this is relative. Within Star Wars fandom, this is kind of one of the tragedies is that that Filoni couldn't complete that that story and that series, because it is truly one of the best things Star Wars has done in a long time. So that there was all these panels, and that was one of the ones we went to on that Thursday. But then we roll into Friday, and Friday was, I tell you, it was very unique. There was an electricity on Thursday, but Friday was different. The lines were longer.
Right.
It was just this charged environment. This buzz was in the air.
Yeah.
And people were just amped for The Last Jedi. Everyone in line on the night that stayed the night. Rian Johnson came out. I think he spent about 5 hours
crazy
with the fans, just going up and down the lines, taking pictures, signing autographs, saying thank you. Listen, this past weekend, Fast and the Furious series just dominated the box office internationally. It did very well domestically in the United States, but just dominated internationally. Broke the Force Awakens record.
Yeah.
Great. I'm glad people love that series, but there is something special about Star Wars fandom. And, where you have the director of a film at a convention taking the time to go around and say thank you to the fans, and the fans giving back and just saying no thank you.
Right.
even though we haven't even seen the finished product. You
Yes.
know, and it's just it's really weird. I was commenting to a friend. I said, you know, the atmosphere at a celebration, it's amazing to me how friendly everyone is. I mean, you have your douchebags running around,
course,
you know, that are like
in a crowd of 70,000, there's bound to be a crowd.
you know, that are knocking people down so they can get to the celebration store.
Listen, I apologize to that old lady and her kids.
She's still in the
How
hospital.
did I know that they were orphans? I mean,
you know, but in general, it is an incredibly like warm and friendly environment, and people are really generally celebratory toward one another, and just a lot of fun. And Friday was no different. It was this just amazing environment. The panels all day long were incredible. It was really probably the best day in terms of content for me.
Yeah.
But this Last Jedi panel, what did you, in general, what did you think of it? Like, what were some of your impressions? Were you okay with what was revealed and what wasn't? Like, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, you know, Friday was an interesting day because my family had arrived the Sunday before Celebration, and we spent 4 days in the Disney parks.
Yeah.
And then Friday was going to be actually our last kind of day of our family vacay. So I was standing in line to meet Disney princesses while you were watching the panel.
You were suffering.
Yes, I was. For all intents and purposes, it was my lot in life last week.
Yeah.
So when I watched it, it was obviously much less electric because it was on my phone in the hotel room later that night.
Sure.
Overall, I think it was great. I think that, you know, the members of the new cast are so relatable and so charismatic. And they would be folks that, despite their link to Star Wars, that I would want to have over at a barbecue. They're just, they're just those kind of folk.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, as far as the teaser or trailer, however you want to label it goes, I absolutely loved that.
Yeah.
And I know that we'll dive into that in a little bit. The panel itself, I thought was great.
Yeah.
There was no major blemishes. Of course, there are questions still lingering, and I think that was intentional.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you, and I would go so far as to say that the panel, you don't need a lot like revealed. I don't think, and not a lot was revealed, but I'm really curious just how Rian Johnson is handling everything. It seems like he's this pro that's been doing this forever, and of course he's made many films, and they're all so unique and good, and like I'm a huge fan of his, but it's just been amazing to me how in control he seems of. There's this profound artistry with Rian Johnson, yet at the same time there's this he's very personable, and so I've really been pleased with just watching how he's handling everything, and we got to see that like on stage in the panel. And not only that, you know, getting to meet, you know, to see Daisy Ridley again, to see John Boyega again.
Right.
But then to see Kelly Marie Tran, it was just announced that her character, her name is Rose, and she's a, you know, maintenance worker for the Resistance. That's it.
Yeah.
And how she gets caught up in this bigger story. But she was just, in terms of personality, delightful.
Right.
And, you know, really like, okay, it's going to be interesting to see how she plays into this story. My guess is that she's probably a love interest for Finn. I know there's people that think Finn and Rey should be together, but as we look at the story, I'm not seeing Finn palling around with Rey. So, and we don't know that much, but it just seems like he, you know, and of course John Boyega said in his comments about his character, he said, you know, Finn is recovering. He will be back, and he's not playing this time.
Right.
And people really like that. Okay, he's not playing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he's recovering. So obviously that's, you know, he took that saber stroke to the back. Not good. And so he survives that. He's on the mend, and we'll see. And so that was Finn or John's kind of like
his take on it.
Not much there.
And were you surprised that there was... And I guess even the same was true for the 40th, but in particular for the Jedi, the Last Jedi panel, not a whole lot of bad guys present.
None.
And did that confuse you? How did the crowd react? Because again, I'm watching this later that night.
Yeah, it was. You know, people were into it. People were fine. I did find that curious. I personally love Rey. I mean, that goes without saying.
Sure.
I think if you don't like Rey, I wonder about you.
Yeah.
Seriously. But for me personally, Ben Solo Kylo Ren is my favorite character in this new series. I'm a huge fan. Would have loved to have seen Adam Driver, but we didn't have Domhnall Gleeson. We didn't have
Gwendolyn Christie.
No Gwendolyn Christie. No Adam Driver.
Yeah.
You didn't even have Andy Serkis. On the show, and so it's interesting. You have all these personalities, and they're not present. I'm guessing they're saving them for D23, maybe Comic-Con, something down the road.
Right.
But yeah, I found that really curious, but that's fine. It's early enough in the game where, you just want your big star. I mean, you just really needed Daisy.
Yeah.
So you have all these introductions. Daisy Ridley's comment, the only one that really, because they're playing the safe game.
Sure.
The only one that really jumped out at me was Ridley said at one point that sometimes, your heroes don't turn out the way you thought they were to be.
Right.
It's something to that effect. Yeah. And I found that really... That's actually a good topic for our culture, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
And I thought that was very interesting that she said that about Rey's relationship with Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
You need that dramatic tension if it's going to be an interesting story.
Right.
And it just seems like here's this myth, this legend of Luke Skywalker, and he is nothing like she thought he was going to be.
Right.
So I don't know. What'd you think about the comment?
No, I'm right there with you in terms of that perspective on that line that she dropped, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in film, because I think it does. It touches a nerve as far as, especially here in the West, where an idol culture is ever present.
Yeah.
And whether that's our devices that we carry with us, or whether that's the movie stars or rock stars that we fawn after, or television stars that we fawn after, I think that we often place people so high on a pedestal and think that they are so free of fallacies and blemishes that if we ever come into contact with them, we are inevitably let down.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an interesting perspective, because I don't know that we've swam out into those waters in the Star Wars universe before.
Yeah.
And especially with someone who has, to this point in the story, has been, I don't want to say Luke Skywalker's without blemish, because certainly he's flirted with the dark side and things like that. But ultimately, he rose above that.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to see a very interesting take, and perhaps a very, very fragile, if not fallen hero.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I cannot wait for the more promotional materials to come out, more information to come out. So we get to the trailer, and Rian Johnson did a great job. He's like, of course I have a trailer, of course. Right before that, he revealed the poster, and I thought the poster is one of the best posters I've seen of anything Star Wars in a while.
It brings up a lot of questions.
It really does.
Yeah.
And so if you have not seen the poster, it's literally the classic pose. Luke has this pose in the A New Hope poster, holding the lightsaber above his head, and it's ignited. This one, though, is really unique because Rey's holding it up. The ignited saber splits the poster in half. If you're facing the poster, obviously on the left side you have Luke's face. On the right side you have Kylo Ren's face. It has this deep red background. It is a really unique image, and one that I saw on eBay. I saw the poster going for over $300
because they were giving out.
They were giving them out.
Yeah.
So I think they had a stock of like 8,000 for those that were in the panel, those that were in attendance.
Right.
And so people are wisely paying for their celebration trip by by putting it on eBay. Beautiful poster. They reveal that. Then Rian Johnson playfully and wonderfully with the audience is like, of course there's a trailer. And they show it. So, trailer rolls. What'd you think?
Well, I think this goes back to your comments about Rian Johnson. I think that the trailer itself was the right blend of mystery and excitement.
Totally, yeah.
It didn't touch all the points that early Force Awakens trailers did. And I would say it didn't touch all the points that even Rogue One did.
Yeah.
I think this, first off, from a purely, I guess, artistic viewpoint, just the color schemes and the use of contrast and shadows and coloring. I cannot get out of my mind that scene, what looks like some type of modified B-wing across, I guess it's the planet of Crate.
Yeah, yeah.
And going across this barren landscape with this red trail behind them.
Salt flats. It's
and you can see on the horizon what appears to be a group of AT-ATs. And it's just like the use of color and camera angles in that shot alone was enough to just leave me just transfixed. I mean, I literally cannot get that out of my mind.
Yeah.
I thought overall it did a great job. It didn't tell us anything, and I'm going to assume that, the line that everyone's talking about, which is when Luke says that the Jedi must end, doesn't necessarily coincide with the visuals that we see. I'm assuming that that's probably audio from another part.
Maybe, yeah.
And I love it. I think it has us thinking and talking, and that's good.
Yeah, for me, it was an odd experience. I saw the trailer, and obviously you get on the hype train and you jump up and down and scream, you know, and celebrate with everyone else. But it didn't have an emotional impact on me like the Force Awakens trailer did. Even Rogue One had a pretty big emotional impact. And so I was a little confused. I'm like, wait a minute, this is Star Wars. I am Jeremy.
Right.
I should be going crazy over this, And the more I thought about it and rewatched the trailer, on my phone and then later on my computer, I was like, okay, why? What is different? And the answer is it's different.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is Rian Johnson is just visually doing some things that are very unique
to the Star Wars universe.
And I think one of the things that is striking to me is that trailer didn't rely on the nostalgia of the 70s and early 80s to promote it. It was using itself to promote it. And, you could say, well, there's nostalgia with Rey and Finn and Poe, and of course Kylo, maybe even Luke. But Luke looks so different and seems so different that it just really felt like Rian Johnson is taking Star Wars in, I don't know if new direction is the right way to say it, but he's taking it to places that it has not been.
Right.
And I can't tell you how exciting that is. And so the more I thought about it and processed, I'm like, this is going to be unique.
Yeah.
And I get it, if you do the 3-act structure of a story, this is your middle chapter. This is the battle. This is when you have the problem that's introduced in the first part.
Right.
Act 1, you really start to deal with the problem and the heroes get in a bad place.
Right.
And they have to overcome that. So this is the second act. So I would imagine there's going to be a little bit darker of a tone than maybe Act 1 or Act 3. But I don't know if you can say this is like Empire. And a lot of people like to say it's Empire Strikes Back, I don't know. But in saying all that, the imagery from, the shot you mentioned about the ships with the red, trailing behind them on Crate to, goodness, the shot of Rey training with the saber and Luke watching over her.
Right.
You get to see some familiar faces. The shot that really was compelling to me was not just the training shot, but what appears to be Luke and R2 looking over the burning, what I think most fans are saying is the Jedi Academy or Luke's Jedi School or whatever you want to call that. And we're witnessing sort of a force back maybe of what happened to Luke and why he's alone.
Right.
And what Kylo did, if it was indeed Kylo Ren that wiped him out.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in all this and in the direction he's taking it in. And that's what's exciting because Force Awakens is so nostalgic and it's wonderful and beautiful and great movie.
Yeah.
But it was relying on some things from the past.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Rian Johnson's just striking off in what seems to be a new direction. And that's exciting to me.
Totally with you. And I think that in many ways, I think two things. I think first and foremost, this is going to give those folks that say Force Awakens didn't push boundaries enough. I think this is going to push them way out onto the limbs of the tree. Yeah. And I think the other thing that really seems apparent is I kind of think they know what they have here. Yeah. And I think they know that something special is headed for theaters in December. And while many people may want to, I don't want to say it's the easy road out, but say it's the second act. It's going to be like Empire, and we know it's dark. I think it may actually make Empire look a lot more light. Mm-hmm. I think that this could potentially go into some places that even Empire didn't touch.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to think about what potentially could happen. Yeah. Yeah, so I think I know you were saying like the audio and video might be two separate things. Right, I actually think they are in the same scene. So I think it is Luke standing in the doorway saying that thing. And one of the things I noticed about it was, the location. It seems like if you pay attention to The Force Awakens and the buildings that Rey's wading her way through to get to the top of Ahch-To, this island on Ahch-To, it resembled some of the doorways, or there were some similarities at least. And so I wonder if to create that sort of dramatic tension, if this is something Luke says very early on in the film, where he's like, the Jedi must end. And then as an audience, we're like, well,
what does that mean?
It's kind of like, okay, one, figuring out why he thinks that. Right. But then second, I think our expectation as an audience is that in our perfect little world, in our minds, we are like, she goes to Ahch-To. Luke is like, Rey, it's so good to have you here. You're amazing Force user. I'm going to train you now, and we're going to go on some adventures together. I think that's what we want to happen, but
instead he's Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino.
Yes.
Get off my island.
Get off my island. Yeah. Go somewhere else. He's wounded. I mean, anytime you lose anyone in life, it's a wounding. And I think, The Last Jedi might be exploring that. What do you do after loss? And I think if we look at Bloodline, the novel by Claudia Gray, we know Luke and Ben Solo are together. Yeah. And that was 6 years out. Right. So this destruction of whatever is a relatively, I could be wrong, but it's a relatively recent wounding. Right. In the life of Luke. And so, that's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. The other thing, the only other image that really was striking to me was that I want to talk about right now is the books on the shelf and what looks like to be inside of a tree or something. And is this a journal of the wills, that she is looking at, and you assume it's her, that Rey that's looking at it, and she's putting her hands on this page, and it looks like the old Jedi symbol, is on there. And so I really have this excitement that we're going to get some new stuff when it comes to the lore of Star Wars and this deepening of our understanding of the Force, of who Luke is and what's happened to him. I think it's going to be really, really thrilling. Rian Johnson did say on Good Morning America right around this time, they were doing interviews sort of coinciding with Celebration. He confirmed basically that Rey's parents are going to come up in The Last Jedi, obviously. And he said, it's something that is absolutely going to be addressed in the movie. So we know that's coming. No mention of Snoke. He was nowhere to be found. Yeah. So I don't know. I have a lot of curious thoughts that maybe we're going to deal a little bit with Rey, her parentage. That will be sort of the big reveal. But then we're going to have to wait a couple years to figure out, is this really true? Because you remember, with Vader and Luke, right at the end of Empire, you have this "I'm your father," and Luke says, "No, that's impossible." And as an audience, we're like, we need a little bit of confirmation on this. Yeah, I'm not ready to jump on board that yet. Yes. And it seems like it could be a very powerful dramatic device to do something in similar, like Rey, your parents are dun, 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 and then
roll credits.
Yeah, roll credits. Wait 2 years. Speculate away. Yeah, and But it is with any good story, you answer one question, but you create more questions.
Absolutely.
And it creates this sort of desire to know that's in all of us.
Right.
You know, and it just seems like The Last Jedi could do some of these things. Any other thoughts on the trailer and just the panel itself?
No, I think we did a good job covering it. And I think that, there are certainly places, if you want a shot-by-shot breakdown, there a wealth of places you can go for the shot-by-shot breakdown.
Sure.
And I think just to follow up on Ryan Johnson's comments about addressing race parentage, that doesn't necessarily mean we're getting the answer.
Yeah.
It means it's going to be
addressed.
Yeah.
Yes, we know you have parents, Ray. And
yes.
So, at Celebration, there were so many panels. I mean, I went to the Making of Rogue One panel, which revealed all sorts of interesting things. There were panels on publishing. There were panels with the comics. There were panels with, some of the writers were doing special workshops, talking about the craft of writing.
Yeah.
It was just thrilling to see all of these things to be a part of. And some of these things you can go online and watch streaming, maybe not through Star Wars' YouTube channel, but
it's
other people were filming these things. And I would highly recommend, going and checking it out. There were a lot of book announcements. And so next week we're going to dig into the novels and books and a little bit of the comics. But, dude, your girl is being well represented. Captain Phasma is not only getting a novel by Delilah Dawson, but also getting a comic that's going to follow how she got out of the compactor and escape Starkiller Base.
Yes.
So when you hear all this, what'd you think, man? She's back.
I think that despite the restraining order that Kathleen Kennedy had on me, my persistence has paid off. I think standing outside Disney headquarters like John Cusack and Say Anything, which is the music box, the ghetto blaster above my head.
Playing Peter Gabriel.
Yes. I'm excited about this. I am certainly intrigued as to how they're going to get the character out of the trash compactor and off Starkiller Base. I'm hoping it's not going to stretch my imagination too much.
And I think you've made a pretty wise decision just with the glut of stuff that's being released, comics, books, everything. You're like, I can't follow everything. Well, I'm going to follow these. And so you've kind of pulled back from the novels and stuff.
Right.
Is Phasma the novel? Are you going to pick that up, read it?
That was definitely on the Amazon pre-order.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dawson is such a, I read her short story, on The Force Awakens, and it's phenomenal. It's so well written. And I've heard nothing but great things. She was wonderful on the panel when they announced that. It was basically, Delilah, do you have something to announce? And she calmly, with this smirk on her face, pulled out a Captain Phasma mask, put it on, and held her finger up to her face to tell us to be quiet. It was really a beautiful moment and funny. And, I'm just excited that she's getting a crack at this character. She writes, women well.
And I think that's one thing that I want to throw in there. I'm glad that they are allowing a strong female writer to write this novel.
Female character. Yeah, absolutely. So it's really thrilling. And there's a Princess Leia book that's going to be written by Claudia Gray. That's literally a princess book.
Right.
They haven't given a ton of details. There's also a Luke book that will be coming out. So a lot of publishing, details were revealed. Not a ton of information about these projects.
Yeah.
But there is going to be the Journey to Force Awakens, where you had all these books and materials coming out. You're going to have a Journey to the Last Jedi. So a very similar thing where Phasma comes out in September, the novel, along with the comic. There's other projects as well that will come out in September, October, leading up to The Last Jedi. So we're getting somewhat of a marketing repeat, which I don't mind. It seems like some really interesting projects. So the Force Discourse might have to go to 2 episodes a month.
Oh my goodness,
to cover that, and what a great problem to have.
Absolutely.
So we'll dig into the publishing stuff next week on next week's episode, and kind of go in a little more in depth into that. Please go over and check out our feed, because Tyler and Carl, I believe, are putting together a Rebels kind of recap reaction to the panel that they witnessed at Star Wars Celebration. They saw the new episode for season 4. Really interesting. I got to see it too, as did you, Devin.
Yes.
And they were, they have some audio of the press conference that followed. So they'll be probably playing some of that, but keep an eye out. They're going to be recording that episode shortly and releasing that as soon as possible. So just keep an eye out on our feed. Pay attention. Star Wars on Tap is always out there, and there'll be a new episode dropping this week as well. And thanks so much for listening. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Thanks for listening to Unmistakably Star Wars. Join us again next week for more news and insights like only we can bring you. Until then, lock the door and hope they don't have blasters.